Hello, I'm Dr. Ahmed Abdelal, and this is the third unit of the Anatomy and Physiology for Speech, Language, and Hearing. Uh, in this unit, we are going to speak about the articulation and resonance system, otherwise known as the articulatory system. There will be two parts. This is the first part, and we'll speak about the anatomy and physiology of the vocal tract and how the vocal tract resonates or how it modifies the buzz that the vocal folds make. So first, the articulatory system performs biological functions, obviously functions for survival, and these are the most important functions. These functions, for example, include feeding and breathing, for example. So the vocal tract consists of the pharynx, oral cavity, and nasal cavity. And this together, in addition to being called the vocal tract because it makes voice, it modifies voice and voice travels through it. In addition to that, it also serves as a passageway to our digestive system and a passageway to our respiratory system. So obviously, it is a survival mechanism. And since we already have the mechanism, we are able to also use it for purposes of speech production. And I say speech because you can only produce speech in the articulatory system. So we say the functions of articulation and speaking are overlaid on the biological functions of the vocal tract. So for speech, imagine this. You have a lot of tissue and muscles and a lot of moisture, a lot of structures involved, between the area where the vocal folds are and the mouth, or the vocal, between the vocal folds and the nose. A lot of things are there. So by the time that you produce the buzz in the vocal folds just make a buzz like ah, and then by the time that buzz leaves the vocal folds and gets out, it could easily die before it leaves your lips. So for this reason, the vocal tract, which consists of one vertical tube, which is the space inside of your throat, and the space in the oral cavity, the space in the nasal cavity, these tubes have air in them. And when the the buzz that the vocal folds make travels to the space, to the pharynx and the oral cavity and nasal cavity, it echoes, it gets echoed many, many, many times. We call this resonance. So a resonance, it refers to how the air in a container vibrates in response to the vibration of an original fundamental vibration. It's like this. Think about it this way. You have a guitar. So you have the strings. The strings produce the fundamental vibration. The strings themselves physically move back and forth. You can see them, you can touch them. So the strings, like the vocal folds, produce the fundamental frequency or the fundamental vibration. Then one string moves forward, midline, back, midline again. That's one cycle of vibration. That cycle then, once the string makes it causes a vibration of the air inside of the wooden compartment of the guitar. And the air, as it is shaped by the space of that container in the guitar, it is going to resonate. It will repeat the tone. It will repeat the same pattern of vibration of the string. The same way, in your vocal folds, they are going to physically go away, come back, and then go away again. And that every time they make a cycle, that cycle of vibration is repeated by the air molecules inside of your vocal tract. The air molecules will move in a certain pattern that mimics the vibration of the vocal folds. So the vocal fold vibration itself, we call it the fundamental frequency, or fundamental frequency refers to the original vibration, and the resonance or the vibration of the air that's in a container. That vibration that is in response to the fundamental vibration, we call it the resonant frequency or resonance. So when that tone is repeated in the vocal tract, it is repeated in a unique way whereby it is amplified. It is made to last long enough until it comes to the lips and it leaves the lips, and then it vibrates the air, and that air vibration will carry on to your ears on the other end. So we call this resonance itself modifies the original tone that is produced by the vocal folds, and that is one of the functions for speech and voice. So one of the non-biological functions of the vocal tract is to produce resonance or modification of the fundamental frequency of the vocal folds, whereby that tone is amplified multiple times so that it will continue to survive until it gets out of your lips. Otherwise, the tone will be muffled and it will die before it leaves your lips. No one would be able to hear you. So, in addition, along the vocal tract, there are articulators, like the tongue, the lips, the alveolar ridge, the velum, different organs of speech that come together in order to make special sounds and words and syllables and so on. So producing speech sounds in addition to resonating and modifying the vocal fold fundamental frequency. So here is the vocal tract. You can think about it this way, simply like a tube, a vertical tube, and two tubes connected to it, the oral cavity and the nasal cavity. And this tube is the pharynx. So then these are the components of the vocal tract together. And the articulators are basically the vocal tract structures that modify the configuration and produce speech. For example, when you move the tongue forward, and it will affect the resonant frequency or the pitch of that voice. If you bring the tongue far front and high, like when you say E, the tongue rises far and goes far to the front. So we call this a front sound. Then if you produce a sound where the tongue goes back, so first, when the tongue moves forward and up, it leaves a lot of room in the back. So that will produce a low pitch. We call it a formant, F1 here. You'll study this in speech and hearing science in detail. But so that will affect the first formant of vibration here in the back of the throat, and then it will also make the pitch in the front higher, and so on. So wherever the tongue moves, the space that it leaves it's behind is going to be a cleared space. The larger the space is, the lower the resonant frequency. It's like going to a large auditorium. When you listen to a huge auditorium and you listen to a microphone, the sound just is rich and rebounds and resonates, and you just can hear it like a low pitch, and it stays longer in there. The opposite is true when you have a small room and you speak, the sound is like more of a high frequency. So where the tongue is, then that will make high frequency because there isn't a lot of room for the air to resonate back and forth. And in the tongue is out of the way, then the frequency or the formant the formant value becomes lower because there's a lot of room inside of that area. So the tongue is one major modifier of vocal tract frequencies or formants, we call them. The jaw, if you open the jaw more, like ah, that is going to create a different frequency as opposed to say e. So each sound has its own requirements for opening the jaw, to what extent, and so on. All of this will modify the tone. So the jaw is a big modifier. The lips, if you say ooh, ooh, you make a low pitch. If you say ee, you make a high pitch. So the lips are also modifiers of speech. Speech frequency. The jaw, the tongue, the velum itself, the soft palate, when it goes up, obviously it creates more room in this oral cavity that makes the pitch here lower, and it takes away from the nasal cavity because it goes up. So that makes the nasal cavity vibration here low frequency. So again, the articulators, in addition to making speech sounds, they also modify the resonant frequency of the vocal tract. Speech articulation is the process of bringing mobile and immobile articulators or organs of speech together to make contact to produce a speech sound. So, for example, you can bring the tongue, put it between the teeth, and you say th. So the tongue comes between the teeth, tongue comes in contact with an area here called the alveolar ridge, or the tongue coming in contact with the soft palate, saying k, k, or g, k. So again, the process of articulation, it means it is the process of bringing mobile, like say the tongue is mobile, the lips are mobile, with contact with immobile structures or articulators. So my teeth, the top front teeth, you call them the maxillary incisors. These are immobile. Then you bring the lower mobile structure and put it next to the upper front teeth and say fa, fa, fa. Or you put the tongue between the immobile structures of the teeth, say tha. So when they come in contact, then you squeeze the air, you push the air in between. There's usually a constriction in between, and that will produce a consonant sound. So the vocal tract, let me see here. Just to explain the different parts of the vocal tract here, I will mention them later. So you have the pharynx. The pharynx is the vertical tube, and that is starts above the vocal folds, and it goes all the way to the back of the nasal cavity. So the back of the nasal cavity here. So the velum, when you speak, it say e or ah, it goes up and goes up here. So all of this space here is the pharynx. It's the vertical tube that goes from the above the vocal folds to the back of the nasal cavity. And we divide the pharynx into three parts. The area that is from above the vocal folds to the base of the tongue, we call it the hypopharynx or the laryngopharynx, from larynx. So this is the larynx, and then you say laryngopharynx or the hypopharynx. The area, the part that's across from the tongue, from the oral cavity. So when you say open your tongue, your mouth, and say ah, you can see that part. That is called the oropharynx, from oral cavity, oropharynx. And the area that is above, we obviously call it the nasopharynx. So the way that the vocal tract works is that it works as a system to resonate, to echo and repeat the sound through the air vibration. And in addition, the way it works is that virtually it amplifies, by the virtue of its shape, it amplifies the sound to make it higher. So, and again, you'll study the mechanism, how it filters the sound. It filters out bad elements of the wave, and it leaves elements that will enhance the wave. You will study that in speech and hearing science. The sounds, of course, that are produced in the vocal tract are unique. The mechanism or the the theory that enables us to understand how the vocal tract filters, sound, is called the source filter theory, or the source filter mechanism. So what is that? What's that about? What is the source filter mechanism? First, source refers to the source tone, or the fundamental frequency of the vocal folds. The vocal folds produce the source tone, the original tone that is gonna be echoed in the vocal tract. So that is the source, including both the vocal folds themselves and the tone that they produce. And then, so that sound the vocal folds make is basically or e. So when you do that, the sound travels along the vocal tract, and as it travels, it becomes filtered, modified, and the good elements of the waves remain to make the sound louder and clearer. So that is the filter mechanism. So the vocal tract is the filter mechanism. The way that the vocal tract is made, that two tubes connected with one tube here. The vocal folds lie underneath at the bottom of the vocal tract, inside of the larynx. So the vocal folds, when you produce speech, are adducted, are closed, sealed, and the air squeezes between them. So basically is closed at the bottom. Physics, according to the laws of physics, a tube that is closed on one end, when you put a tone into it, that tone is going to have only 1/4 of the wave fitting in. The first wave will be the greatest wave. So only 1/4 of that wave will fit in from the vocal folds to the mouth, to the lips. So we call this first vibration. We call it F1. So in F1, again, the tone, 1/4 of the wave fills the entire space from the vocal folds to the lips. And then just the way that it goes, how this wave begins to echo, begins to be repeated by the air. it is going to every, say you have 10 vibrations. First, the first vibration is echoed, then the second is muted, the third is echoed, the fourth is muted. Every even number is deleted. Every frequency that is an even an odd number stays. So it weeds out all the elements of the wave that oppose the wave itself and make it weaker. So all of these are weeded out, filtered out, and all the elements that are echoed in particular locations of the vocal tract, these sounds are echoed in a louder. So they are combined together to make the sound louder. Like you are singing by yourself, but suddenly you have 10 people joining you and singing with the same loudness level that you are singing. So these 10 people are going to make your sound 10 or 11 times louder than your own time, than your own sound by itself. So that is what it does. These tones that are produced by the echoing of the air in the vocal tract, they will make the sound louder, and it will enable the sound to survive until it leaves the lips. So in that situation, the vocal tract is a filtering mechanism, and it, by its nature of being a closed tube resonator, it filters out so that it can amplify to the maximum level. So that is the source filter mechanism or source filter theory. Source is the vocal tract and the vocals, the tone that serves as the original tone or fundamental frequency. The filter mechanism is the vocal tract because of the reasons I just explained. So generally when we look at speech sounds, the English language has 43 speech sounds. And in the American language, mostly you'll find 42, but in some regional accents, you'll find 43. So this is when we look at the sounds, we focus 100% on what we hear, not what we read and write. That's a totally different system. So in phonetics, you are going to study the sounds individually and how each sound is produced and all of this. So you'll find a lot of conflict between spelling and sounds. The 26 letters that we have, they represent 43 English sounds. And so when we study phonetics, we don't care about spelling. We focus just on how the sound is produced. So all the sounds are two groups, either a vowel, and there are 14 vowels in English, and then the rest of the 43 are consonant sounds. All vowels are produced by vocal fold vibration. So these are all voiced sounds. So when we describe a vowel, there is no reason to say, oh, is this vowel voiced or not voiced? Is it produced by vocal fold vibration or not? Because all of them are produced by vocal fold vibration. So when we describe a sound, a vowel, we look at where the tongue is, far back, high, low. How about the position of the lips? How about the tension? How much tension do you put into making the sound? So these are the vowels. However, the consonants are mostly, for the most part, except for two consonants that are produced at the vocal folds. The rest of the consonants are produced in the oral and nasal cavities. So that source and filter mechanism, in addition to modifying the sound, it has the articulators. And when you have two articulators come together, then you block to make a constriction. That constriction is partial or just maybe more extreme at some points, or a complete obstruction. So any sound can be produced like that, either a constriction or obstruction that is partial, or complete obstruction. So constrictions that are partial usually produce, for the most part, many of the sounds can be produced by friction. For example, this group of sounds, the biggest group, is called fricative sounds. For example, they make what we call frication. Sh, j, s, z, and then we have so all and th and the. All these sounds are fricative sounds. You produce a constriction, partial constriction, and you push the air through that constriction. It gives you a hissing sound or like a friction sound. Another kind of vibration is, sound production in the vocal tract is producing like blocking and releasing. So these sounds, there are 7 sounds in the English language that are called stop sounds or plosive sounds. If you can, I like to trace them usually all when I describe sounds from the lips and back to the vocal tract, to the vocal folds. So for example, and they come in 2, 2, 2, and 1. So first, stop or plosive sound. Say pa, pa. You try it. When you say it, you shut down the airway completely by that obstruction. Pa, and then explode it. And then ba. The only difference between pa and ba is that pa is voiceless, ba is voiced. It means the vocal folds vibrate in addition to the action of the lips. That makes ba a voiced consonant. Then the next 2 are t, t, d. Again, t voiceless, d is voiced. And the next 2 are k and g. Now you try it. Say k, k, and g. So k voiceless, g voiced. And then the last one at the vocal folds themselves say like ka and ba and. So that is a glottal stop. The vocal folds just shut, no vibration, and then go away. So these are bursts of pressure, the 7 sounds, and also the frication or friction. There are sounds that work on modulating the resonance. For example, like changing the shape and length of the vocal tract. Like vowels, and in addition to that, there are some like where you have blockage and rerouting of the air and so on. But the biggest ways to produce sounds are through friction and through blockage of the vocal tract, partial constriction or total obstruction. So here are the articulators, and you could see, for example, the first is the tongue. That's the biggest articulator. It modifies the entire vocal tract. The tongue can come between the 2 teeth and make lingua dental sounds. The tongue can come make contact with the alveolar ridge, that little area behind the 2 big maxillary incisors here. A little bump there or ridge, we call it the alveolar ridge. So that comes, it will make lingua, alveolar, or simply alveolar sounds. It can make contact